Ravenians. They were a secret sect whose belief system revolved around the cycle of light and darkness.
Katie was researching them before she went missing. I think they're involved in her disappearance.
We are talking about the crime mystery movie HELLmington. This one stars Nicola, Correia-Damude and Michael Ironside. It's a Canadian film directed by Justin Hewitt-Drakulic, cool name dude, and Alex Lee Williams. Now this has kind of been marketed to be somewhat of a horror film. This really is not a horror film in any shape or way. It does have a few kind of horror iconography trappings, I suppose you would call it. A couple of horror images, but when you actually watch the movie, there's nothing really horror related in it at all. It is more or less just a crime drama / mystery. So what's the story here? Well, we have this woman who is a police detective after the loss of her daughter in a fire. She returns back home to her sort of, you know, small town home where her father is on death's bed as well. And she's obviously very depressed and kind of on a kind of a downward spiral, so to speak. But when she's there, she gets embroiled in this mystery that is to do with her father, maybe her uncle, played by Michael Ironside, various other characters that will kind of meet throughout the movie, but primarily through this missing girl that she actually knew while she was at kind of high school. I mean, basically people kind of related to that. And as the film progresses, we learn that there may well be this kind of strange sect that are involved that kind of worships the number 9, and they may have some type of involvement in here, and seemingly you don't know who's kind of like maybe or maybe not involved with this particular sect. So what happens? You'll have to watch the movie to find out. So let's first of all talk about the positives of the movie, and then we'll talk about anything I wasn't so keen on. So I think the first thing for me, I'll talk about Nicola Correia-Damude. I thought she made a quite compelling lead character here. She seems like a flawed character who does have some kind of like some character flaws, but also a very confident and competent police detective. Even though she's actually not in her jurisdiction in this movie, she still comes across as sort of commanding the screen and comes across as very good at her job, etc., and a confident performance. The movie as well will kind of keep you guessing with, you know, lots of kind of twists and turns. I think the story structure here is lends to kind of like, if you're a mystery fan, there's a lot to enjoy here with kind of many kind of like, you know, red herrings and kind of unexpected twists as the kind of the film sort of progresses. And generally speaking, all the cast I think do a pretty good job here. You've actually got a small role by Monroe Chambers, reuniting of course with Michael Ironside from Turbo Kid, a movie that I love. Anyway, so yeah, and I've got to say there are some kind of like, some fairly kind of like eerie scenes involving these kind of sect members that, you know, gives you the impression that they may be supernatural, but, you know, they really aren't. But nonetheless, they kind of like, the visuals do look kind of pretty good. So maybe what doesn't work so well. So this really feels like a TV movie. In actual fact, I would say this would be better suited to a TV episode of some type of kind of like police procedural kind of series along the lines of kind of CSI. I don't really watch them, to be honest, so I'm not really familiar with all of them, but NCIS, all those kind of stuff. This really just feels like it should be an episode of that, because to be honest with you, it plays very much like a kind of a TV episode of a show. I mean, we have like when someone's kind of going through the clues, you'll have like little you know, playbacks of kind of lines of dialogue that were kind of like said earlier on in the movie, and kind of almost like a narration, and then there's kind of like little flashbacks to things that we sort of saw earlier on. It really feels like a kind of a TV episode of sort of some type of show. And I've got to say, for me, some of the plot elements here seems very superfluous, and I'm really talking about the sect thing, because they didn't really feel like they actually had much relevance on the actual plot. When you could have watched the movie as a whole, you just kind of think, well, what is the point of that actually? What is the point of the sect? When it comes down to it, and you kind of realise the person that is behind things, thinking, well, you know, how have they got all these people to kind of go along with it? What is the relevance of this particular sect on the actual story? Because it doesn't really seem like there is one, to be honest. So it just felt like that was kind of something to have some visuals, maybe to kind of make it seem a little bit more mysterious than it actually is. Because when it's all sort of said and done, it actually ends up being a fairly kind of like simple kind of motivation. I mean, there are some interesting reveals here, and obviously you do feel some kind of emotional sympathy for some of the sort of characters involved, but actually, when it comes down to it, the actual plot isn't quite as complex as you initially might think it might be. And I've got to say, I think some of the direction here is a little weak. And this, again, we're going to go back to it feeling like a TV show. Just the kind of some of the choices here, it just feels like a television rather than a kind of a film that you're watching, and you can almost forget you're watching a movie, and it just feels like kind of cheap and just kind of like lots of kind of like close-up shots, and again the kind of like the the narration and flashbacks. I think that the casting was particularly good as well in aspects. The acting wasn't bad, but we have these kind of two girls and they look very similar. So it's kind of, you're thinking, well, which one's this? These are two kind of like major players in the movie, and I'm thinking, I don't know if I would have cast two very similar looking actresses in this kind of role, to be honest. And again, a lot of these kind of like these plot points just seem superfluous and feel like they're kind of like more there to kind of like pad out the running time to a certain degree. So overall, it's not a badly made film by any stretch of the imagination. And if you like police, mystery, kind of like TV shows and kind of procedural shows, then this may well be a film that you might be interested in. But if you are more of a kind of, you like a bit more of a cinematic experience, and also if you're a horror fan, then this might not be the one for you. Overall, like I've said, it's watchable. The mystery is quite kind of intriguing, although I felt like it's a little bit underpinned by the end, to be honest with you, because it just seems a little bit too, oh, what? That's it? But there you go. So I'm going to give this one a 5 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment, and I shall look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.